We go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Atom boys, give her the gun. Now
Hello, this is John Aker, call sign Nomad. This is my YouTube channel. The top line of the splash screen is their YouTube is calling a handle, part of the URL to find this channel, youtube.com/@John Aker, aviating author. And note the dots, the periods between the last four words. That forms the handle. This introduction is the first of more than a dozen videos that I generated that follow my autobiography, recollections, my life in and out of the military. And they will represent planes I flew during the 18 years of active flying status I was on during my 20-year military career as a United States Air Force pilot. I found software that runs in the computer flight simulator world, matching airplanes that I flew in real life. And I narrate them with a narrative stream of consciousness, stories of what was happening in my life during the times when I flew those airplanes. And, well, they're war stories, you know, of course. And in war stories, you have to be careful because the first liar ain't got a chance. You'll learn a little bit about computer flight simulators and videos, the equipment I use to get it done, and we'll have some fun. And check your six back there. I might be on your tail. Nomad is back. Let's take a look at the rest of this series. And this is a continuation of the KC135 A model tanker, air refueling tanker, moved from upgrade at Castle in California to Fairchild Air Force Base outside of Spokane, Washington. I was a co-pilot on a crew with Ralph W. Trousdale. Trousdale introduced himself by his name, Trousdale, as in Trows. He liked to be called Trows. He was a mentor and a man who knew more about that airplane than the rest of us put together. Let's get into the video. Nomad's back, and through the magic of the pause button, we've completed our flight from Fairchild to Kadena Air Base, Okinawa. Refueled some B-52s, and now they've graciously allowed us to fly out of Thailand. We're currently at Utapao International Airport, serving Bangkok. The rules of engagement in those days were between the U.S. and the USSR. You could have 6 tankers at Utapao at any one time, maximum. So on changeover day, another tanker flew in, relieved the tankers who were on duty, and one tanker flew out. As soon as that 7th KC135 touched down, the Russians were storming the embassy, screaming, "Too many airplanes, too many airplanes, too many airplanes." We're going to leave Utapao here, head up towards about 100 miles northwest of here. And see if we can find an airport called Cockley Royal Thai Air Force Base. All right. Looks like we got 4 engines up and running. Let's put some flaps down. Release those parking brakes. And see if we can get it in the air. A little more scenery here at this particular airport than typically. And let's rotate. And a typical takeoff in a KC135. Look at the length of the runway and see how much weight you can put on the airplane. Let's haul out the autopilot and sort of take some of the strain off. There's our problem. We're about 3,500 feet and we're going to go up to about 6,000. So 900 foot rate per minute rate of climb on it. And she'll start moving up. As you can imagine, since we're so close to the water, the elevation of these airports here are not very high. We're headed up across this bay, part of the bay, across another airport that we were flying out of at ×2, Don Muang, and elevation there is about 8 feet. We don't need 6,000 feet. Let's crank that altimeter down, or that autopilot altitude hold down to 5,000, and we're coming up on 5,000 now. About 4,800 feet here. And I'm going to, as we level off at 6,000 feet here, I'm going to pause the sim, and I've got a couple of still shots I'd like to share with you out here. We've seen that one. I mentioned we We'd already refueled some B-52 strikes going into North Vietnam, and also mentioned that was the plane I flew on, those Chrome Dome, 24-hour Chrome Dome flights to build up my flying time. 2, 4, 6, 8. An 8-engine jet bomber, a whole lot of bombs. There's an old joke about a fighter pilot being in the air when a B-52 reported to his home base. He had shut down one of his engines, and the fighter jock came back and said, "Oh, the dreaded 7-engine approach." It's coming from a guy who probably has one engine on his airplane. There's a lot of ragging going back and forth between different crews, different airplanes, but it was mostly in good fun. Notice this B-52 is painted a dark color all over, which was part of a camouflage, and at Fairchild I ragged one of the B-52 crews with the story of the 52 crew headed out to get on their airplane, fly a mission, and it was so well camouflaged they couldn't find it on the ramp. Let's take a look at one more map here. This red balloon is the approximate location of Kadena Air Base, Okinawa. This is the southern tip of Japan, and Japan claims these islands out here, maybe even these. We'll come back to this map later on, but you can see we would refuel the B-52s out in this area, and they would then head on in. You see the general location of, this is an updated map. Much Ho Chi Minh City here was Saigon back in those days. You got Vietnam, the DMZ was somewhere about in here, between South and North Vietnam. Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. We left Utapao, which is about here, and we're headed for Tak Lee Royal Thai Air Force Base up there. Okay, before we get up there, and I'm going to save some time up here in a couple of minutes, but let's step outside and take a look at this airplane. And you notice something a little different on the end of the boom here. We're flying with a drogue attached. Back in these days, if you were going to refuel fighters with a probe on them, they had to attach the drogue to the boom. If you're flying a regular refueling mission, you flew without the drogue attached to the end of the boom. And let's see her deploy. And that basket extended out a little bit. I don't think this is quite true to life, because I can recall seeing planes with that drogue attachment, and it was hanging limp. It wasn't stowed. It only streamlined back there. And that's the difference in refueling. If you were a bomber, you come up behind there and you stabilize in the contact position. The boom is flying down there in your windshield. And when you're stabilized, the boom operator flies that boom up, extends it, and plunks it into the receptacle. If you're flying a fighter with a probe on it, it's all your word. The boom operator lowers the boom there, holds it steady, and it's your job as a fighter pilot to come in and plug the probe into that drogue. We field a lot of the F-105s around here, and they were capable of both. They had a receptacle, which they preferred to use because it's less work on them, and they did have a probe. I think if you extend your index finger and bend at the knuckle, it was a bit like that, and it laid flat into the fuselage on the right side in front of the cockpit. They hit a switch and that thing popped open, and they could in unison give you the finger. Probe's out now. Okay, let's bring that drogue and the boom back into their stowed positions. I had a young three-striper as a boom operator when I was over here. And he got compliments from fighter pilots, and he didn't get many compliments out of guys who were loaded for bear heading north into the Hanoi corridor, Route Pack 6. Green and brown, mostly green as I recall. And my young boomer is back there. He may not have had a lot of time in the boom, but he was good. Then an F4 pulled in behind us one morning, and the refueling receptacle is behind the tandem cockpit. Two pilots sat, pilot and the guy in the back, sat in tandem seats, kind of like an old Beast 47, and the receptacle was behind that canopy. And my boomer reached, they said their receptacle door was stuck. They couldn't get it to pop open. And my boomer says, well, put the switch to open. He reached over the canopy and he deftly tapped on that receptacle door with the boom nozzle, and the door popped open, and those guys got their fuel that morning. We had one guy, aircraft commander, got sent home early from the war. The brief offload to these fighters most of them were topping off just before crossing the river, heading into Laos, going up to Vietnam. And they had, the scheduled offload was 1,800 pounds, which is not very much for us. We had plenty of fuel. We knew how much it'd take to refuel the fighters we were scheduled to refuel. And typically we'd tell them to come in and stay on until they got a pressure disconnect. I bet they were tanks full, and we'd fill them up. And this one AC he was a by-the-book feller. As soon as they hit fighter latch onto the boom, as soon as they hit 1.8, 1,800 gallons, he'd punch them off. Tell the boomer to disconnect. And had a lot of fire chucks that weren't too damn happy with him. But we almost always had enough fuel that sometimes we'd be back there sitting on those orbit patterns just south of the river, waiting for the post-strike birds to come through on their post-strike, see if they needed any gas to get home, and we'd give them what we had, as long as we had enough to get home to. Once again, through the magic of the old pause button, I cut out the middle part of that trip up here. We're not too far south of Tockley. Let's see if we can find the base and put her on the ground. And you can see we also lost some altitude. We're down to 3,000 feet here. We've got a little ways to go, and not quite as far to drop for the landing, because they're a whopping 107 feet elevation at Tockley. And we're going to be landing on runway 36 here. And I can see it out there in the distance, so let's pull some power off. Let that speed bleed off a bit. Gear down. And some flaps. Looky there, I forgot when you put the flaps down, she tends to balloon. We're up on frequency, just in orbit, waiting for somebody to refuel. We'd already refueled our test fighters. Heard a call from a guy coming out of Route Pack 6, 105, shut to hell, spewing fuel. And I said, we're going, I told the GCI operator, ground control intercept, he was talking like he had them painted. Unfortunately, he didn't. I was following his directions. We headed north across the river, balls to the wall. My boom operator was, a young fella was back in the boom pod. He says, "You want me to lower the gear, the boom now, AC?" And no, you lower it at this speed, it'll come off the airplane. So we hung around. I said, "You keep your eyes peeled on the ground. Tell me if you see anything winking pink at us, because that's probably AAA." We were way the hell up in Laos, almost into North Vietnam.
Sink rate.
Unfortunately,
Sink rate. Sink rate.
the GCI people weren't really painting him. I finally used a feature on our radio called DF Direction Finder. Had that pilot give me a call.
Sink rate.
And he was already south of us
Pull up.
when we were still hauling ass north.
Sink right.
Fortunately, he went down right by the river, and they got him out. Lost an airplane, but saved the most important part of the flight. Towards up. Let's bring those flaps up. Not much in the way of. Let's slide way over here and pause her a second. Bring her to a stop, put the parking brakes on. Here at Tockley, the taxiways were super narrow. And I was headed down this taxiway, and it's about this wide. So it's just room for the main gear, and the wings, both wings are, the engines are hanging over. And there's a ditch along here. And there's these Thai workers, they're digging ditches. First time in my life I ever saw a three-man shovel. There was a rope tied onto the shovel just above the spade head, and a man on each end of that rope, and to swing it, and one man to handled the handle, and all three of them I'm sure got paid. They're working in this ditch, and we're taxiing down here, and you'd expect to see those guys scramble out of the ditch to get away. We passed right over the top of them. They're just smiling and waving. No air protection or anything. Wow. I don't think we've even got a taxiway here in this scenery. Nope, so we're going to leave it here while I talk about a couple other things. Three-man shovel. This is that map we were talking about. We're up about here, just about below that HA. Tockley. Here I am in front of our Hooch 255. And it was brown and green. Notice these walkways made out of wood. That's so when you're headed for the latrine or anywhere else you needed to go, you didn't walk on the ground. Stayed off the ground as much as you could, because they had what they called two-steppers and three-steppers, snakes, very poisonous. The three-steppers were, if they bit you, you could usually get about 3 steps before you died. The two-steppers were worse. And we did have, this was back in, when we were in Bangkok, did get a day off, and we went and did a little sightseeing. And here's your intrepid pilot trying to navigate this baby elephant. Okay, there you go. There's always time to have some fun here and there. One more thing, we were having a drink in the officers club one night. We were here at Tockley, and these 105 pilots were kind of not really talking to us, but just kind of ragging through the air about those bus drivers and guys flying those big airplanes. I leaned over to looked at that one fellow who was doing the talking, and I waved my index finger at him. I said, "Young man, that's the most important finger in the world to you." And he said, "How come?" I said, "That's the finger that flips the pump switches on and sends that fuel down the boom when you're hanging back there." Couldn't buy a drink the rest of the night. Okay, we're going to wrap up this third part of the KC135 series of videos because I'm getting ready to head out for another assignment back to Castle. This time I'm going down there and learn what it's like to be on the other end of a tanker boom. So here's the Nomad signing off, telling you keep that head on a swivel, keep your eye on your six, stay clear, stay safe. See you down the road. If you enjoyed some of this material, you might reach up there and click that like button. Want to come back, hit the subscribe to this channel. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad, flying flight simulators based on my career as a U.S. Air Force pilot.